Hello?
Hey guys, it's John Branch from the New York Times. How's it going up there?
Good, John.
How high up are you guys right now?
We are about 1,200 feet up the wall at our base camp. This has been our home for 9 days now.
Tommy, I guess the bottom line question here is, why are you doing this? What's the point of all this for you?
On the air tonight with a story of two men attempting to free climb the famously steep face of El Capitan in Yosemite.
Inch by nerve-wracking inch, using only their fingertips to grasp razor-sharp edges,
Tommy Caldwell and Kevin Jorgensen attempt the hardest climb in the world.
No one has ever free climbed the Dawn Wall.
3,000 feet of straight-up granite.
a climb watched by the
Guys
world.
have captured the world's attention.
Tommy Caldwell in der Wand des El Capitan.
Kevin Jorgensen nur als Sicherung.
They're trying to make history.
Climb long thought impossible.
El Capitan's infamous
Dawn Wall.
Dawn Wall.
As a kid, Tommy was slow at everything. He had a lot of difficulty in school. The teachers actually at one point told us that he was mentally retarded and would never learn.
I was like developmentally delayed through probably still, honestly. I was this very fragile little kid, incredibly shy. But meanwhile, my dad was like the symbol of a man. He's like this big bodybuilder dude and mountain climber, larger than life.
Tommy was small. He was way behind. Didn't crawl until he was over 2.
I think my dad felt the best way to prepare this fragile little kid for the world was to toughen him up a little bit. So he took me on all these adventures.
3 years old, strap on the skis.
Camping in a snow cave during a blizzard. Every summer, we'd go to Yosemite with my family, and my dad would take me climbing on these giant walls. Some of the craziest climbing stunts you could ever do. And he did it with a 6-year-old.
The things that Tommy's dad took him on, today you would have Child Protective Services coming after you. He basically took hardship and rephrased it as growth.
He was loving, but he definitely let me suffer.
The word that was in my mind was resilience. Seems to me one of the best gifts you can give your kid is an ability to deal with adversity.
By the time I was 14 or 15, there was climbs that I could do that my dad couldn't.
Tommy's strong.
Climbing was the first thing in my life where I could stand out a little bit.
All right.
So Tommy was 16, and Snowbird held the Snowbird Invitational that year.
This big climbing competition.
We thought we'd drive over there and watch the comp and get some autographs.
Just went there to be fans, really.
And the day before the big competition, they had a citizens comp that anybody who shows up can enter.
So I entered that, my first competition ever.
Well, Tommy won, and I don't know if this is an official policy or just something they dreamt up on the spot, but they asked Tommy if he wanted to enter the World Invitational the next day.
Hello, everyone. I'm James Brown, and welcome to Snowbird, Utah, for the International Sport Climbing Championship.
Expert climbers will test their skills against a man-made 120-foot wall.
There were 12 competitors.
The icons of climbing.
And it was so intimidating.
So it's going to be a very challenging field. In fact, Tommy's the only one in there that we haven't heard of before.
Nobody had ever heard of me. I was just like this scrawny little kid.
I was videoing Tommy as he goes climbing up this thing.
Come on, Tommy. Nobody has made it past that roof.
He got past the final roof.
Yeah, that's sticking it back.
So Tommy's winning.
I can't believe it.
started shaking.
Hold the camera.
I just dropped the camera. I mean, I completely lost it. Tommy got to the top. The only climber to complete this climb. So all of a sudden, Tommy went from nobody at all to winner of Snowbird.
I mean, that was just unbelievable. It changed his whole life.
Tommy became known as one of the best young climbers, but he didn't grow up the way most of us do. Through high school, like he didn't have girlfriends, he didn't have a social life. He just went climbing.
I was doing a series of competitions, and I met this girl, Beth. She just caught my attention totally. I was like, whoa.
Tommy just had like this really big, goofy, endearing grin. We both lived and breathed climbing.
Tommy's this climbing savant, and then he meets Beth, you know, the female version of himself. He's head over heels.
I just found ways to go wherever she was.
Okay.
I found out she was going to Yosemite, so I followed her out there. We ended up climbing a big wall together.
You know, we were next to each other all the time.
24 hours a day together.
Sleeping 1,000 feet off the ground on this portaledge, which is like a hanging cot.
You sleep head to toe, like there's just more room that way. So I laid down, and then she laid down like the same way that I was, with her head at the same end, and I was pretty excited by this. I was like, ooh, goodness, this is getting exciting. I just like hadn't been in love before, and I just fell hardcore right off the bat.
It just clicked. We had so many dreams of traveling and climbing together.
And then we got invited to go on a big adventure trip.
An expedition to Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan is this beautiful mountainous country in Central Asia. We'd seen pictures from friends that had been there, and it looked like a paradise for climbers.
I was a photographer working in the outdoor industry, and this amazing opportunity came about for me to shoot an expedition with Beth and Tommy and Jason.
We were just 4 young climbers looking for a big adventure in a new and unusual part of the world.
We charter a helicopter into the Karasu Valley. Unbelievably beautiful. Just felt like kind of a dream come true. Out in the middle of this adventure with this girl that I was totally in love with. A week and a half into our trip, the 4 of us were sleeping in portaledges 1,000 feet up the wall, and we wake up to gunshots, like these piercing, close gunshots. The bullets hitting the wall right between our portaledges. We're sitting there like, oh my God, we're getting shot at, and you can't run away, you can't do anything. We're just sitting ducks up here.
We looked down, and you could see these figures.
These guys waving at us to come down.
We rappelled down to the ground.
We're encountered by 4 guys, heavily armed.
They took us to our base camp.
All of our tents were cut open, a lot of our food was splayed around the meadow.
They had us start hiding our camp.
And so suddenly it kind of hits us. We're hostages right now.
Later, we learned that these guys were part of the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, these rebels that wanted to overthrow the government.
We were caught up in this battle between these rebels and the Kyrgyz military.
All of a sudden, Kyrgyz military helicopters start to fly over. Soldiers show up on the hillside, and this battle breaks out. The rebels start pointing their guns at us, yelling, hide! And we dive in these trees.
The rebels had taken a Kyrgyz soldier hostage.
They took the other captive.
And they just shot him in the head.
I just remember shaking uncontrollably and like Tommy just holding me as tight as he could. Are they just gonna kill us next?
Once it's dark, the gunfire dies down, and the rebels start marching us through the mountains. It's 4 rebels, the 4 of us. It's really cold. We're at 11,000 feet in elevation. We don't have warm clothes. We don't have any food.
We had no idea where we were going.
We would hike through the night, And then during the day, they would hide us.
They hid us in the craziest spots.
Burying us in holes in the ground so that we wouldn't be seen by the military.
This went on for 6 days.
Day 2 or 3, hunger really started to set in.
You know, we're sort of just wasting away.
At first, I thought they're taking us back to their base, or they're taking us somewhere, there's a purpose to this.
Finally, we realized they were leading us in a giant circle. Like, these guys clearly don't have a plan.
Jason and John started to scheme about how we could get away. I mean, things were getting super desperate. They were ready to take matters into their own hands. At one point, 2 of our captors left. We never saw them again. We found out later that they got killed. On our 6th night of captivity, the 2 captors that were remaining with us decided that one of them would go in one direction to try and get some food, and then we would head off with the other one.
So we get left alone with the one rebel, climbing up this cliffside. We were comfortable on the terrain, and he was not. If we're gonna escape, this is the opportunity.
Jason and John decided they would try and push our remaining captor off this cliff and then run away.
John and I were trying to look for a point that we could throw him off.
But he kept going, and we just couldn't quite push him.
As we got to the top, I realized that our opportunity was gonna be over. And I decided that this was what I had to do. I had to go, and I needed to push this guy off this cliff in order to save our lives.
Tommy came over to me at this point and he said, you know, do you think I should do this? I was thinking, yes, no, so I just didn't say anything.
I took that as that she would be okay with it. So I just ran up behind him, and I put one hand on his back and grabbed his gun strap, and my other hand went on his chest, and I just gave a push to send him flying off this cliff. We saw him hit a ledge, bounce off of it, and just fall out of sight into the darkness.
Tommy completely broke down. He had his head in his arms and he was crying.
I couldn't believe what I had just done. I had just killed somebody. The whole world came crashing down on me all at once.
You know, we were all trying to reassure him and say that, you know, you're not a bad person. You just saved our lives.
They really tried to comfort me, but there was a sense of urgency that we better get going because we didn't know if the other captor was going to show up.
We knew from hiking in earlier where there was a military outpost that we could try and run to.
So even on almost no food for 6 days, adrenaline kicked in.
And so we ran for 4 hours through the darkness down this valley.
We were greeted by this man yelling at us with this gun.
Throw up our hands, start yelling that we're Americans.
And luckily it was the Kyrgyz army.
This huge wave of relief came over us. I mean, this horrible situation that we had been in was over. They gave us food, water, military fatigues, and then we got helicoptered out from there.
Studios in New York. Here is Jane Pauley.
4 young Americans face a life or death choice with the ultimate question, to kill or be killed.
When we got home, there was this crazy media circus.
You guys are walking with this captor on a very rocky cliff. Tell me what you did, Tommy.
We just ended up pushing the guy.
You pushed him over the cliff?
Yeah.
What happened at that moment when you realized I've actually done this? I've killed somebody.
You know, I thought that I was an evil person. I said to Beth, I was like, how can you love me after I did something like this? And,
After Kyrgyzstan, Tommy had tremendous personality changes, speaking so softly.
I was like, what is inside me that allowed me to do this?
I'm just an entirely different person.
Yosemite is known as the Mecca of world rock climbing. And the crown jewel of this Mecca is El Capitan. It's just this iconic 3,000-foot high monolith. When you see that thing for the first time, I mean, it takes your breath away. And the steepest, blankest, sort of most forlorn, impressive part of El Cap is the Dawn Wall. People have done a handful of free climbs up El Cap to the right and to the left. But the Dawn Wall has never been climbed. Just the sheer magnitude of blank rock on the thing. I mean, it just looks impossible. Until Tommy Caldwell came along, nobody had actually considered trying it. If Tommy and his partner, Kevin, can actually do this, it will be the most continuously difficult rock climb ever done. Nothing else is even close to it.
It's December 27th, and we're planning on heading up for like 2 weeks plus. We'll see. The goal is climb it in a single push, which means we're gonna leave the ground, live on the wall, and not come down until we're done.
We're going for it. I'm nervous. We've put in so much work leading up to this moment. And there's nothing left to do but just take a couple deep breaths and start climbing. Day one.
Yep. It's gonna be awesome.
The Dawn Wall itself is 3,000 feet tall. The route that they think they have figured out is comprised of 32 individual pitches. Each pitch is its own challenge, like the stages of a race. A pitch is a rope length long, about 150 feet or so, and ends at a ledge or a natural resting place on the rock.
Yeah, man, good work.
When you end the pitch, you anchor yourself to the wall.
Okay, take one down, 30-something to go.
And hold the rope or belay as your partner comes up. Once you've both done that pitch without falling, you can move on to the next pitch. When you're free climbing, you're using your hands and feet to climb the natural features on the rock without any assistance from the rope.
Good job.
You take turns leading each pitch, placing protection in the cracks to catch you in case you fall.
Yeah, come on, got it. Oh! Oh!
If you fall, you just go back down to the beginning of that pitch, and then the other guy tries it.
They have a certain number of pitches they're trying to get through each day to stay on track to finish this climb. The first few pitches are relatively easy. But as you get higher on the wall gets steeper, the holes get smaller, and the climbing gets way more difficult.
It's hard to articulate the level of detail that's required. You can't make any mistake in where you grab the hold and how you place your toe. You're pushing and pulling as hard as you possibly can. Always on the verge of slipping off. We climb all day into the night, trying the same pitch until we both do it.
Man, I'm getting tired.
Tommy is just a man possessed.
Finish this. Yeah, come on. Yeah, man.
You know, I'm just trying to keep up.
Come on. That was awesome, dude. Thank God I didn't fall.
When you're trying a big wall like this, the work does not end once the climbing's done at the end of the day. You gotta haul up hundreds of pounds of gear. Set up portal edges.
This thing's pretty good. Pretty flat even, I would say.
And gag down some food.
I actually brought a bag of kale on the wall to put it in our burritos. Mmm. This is like the hardest thing you could ever do on your fingers climbing this route. Just grabbing razor blades. I tape up any wounds with Neosporin for healing, and then I wake up probably twice in the night and reapply. Getting pretty obsessed. Put on my lips.
Then you gotta hope you can get a little sleep. The next day is gonna be more of the same, but harder, and it's gonna go on day after day. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, nobody knows.
After Kyrgyzstan, we're trying to absorb what had happened. Beth is like really traumatized.
I started to have nightmares and couldn't sleep, and I did not want to be separated from Tommy at that point.
Beth and I are like bonded at the hip, like I'm sort of her rock. We go to church a few times. We haven't been to church in like 10 years. We're just like searching. We're like, what does this mean? We go to a therapist. It's like nobody knows how to deal with this situation. I think my way of dealing with it was to just get back on that horse and go climb again. This has always been my safe place, my way to deal with life. I didn't know what to think about Kyrgyzstan. Part of me was feeling kind of empowered. I was like, when the shit really hit the fan, I was able to like do what needed to be done to get us out of there.
Tommy jumped right back into climbing, and slowly we got back into our groove.
We're both professional rock climbers, doing these really cool climbs all over the place.
He started, setting these lofty goals.
Trying to climb harder and harder routes.
And then about a year after Kyrgyzstan, we were remodeling this like tiny little cabin. And Tommy was using his parents' old table saw.
Tommy did something that he should never do, which is he tried to pull a small piece of wood through the table saw. If the blade catches on the wood, it sucks your hand right back into the blade.
I heard Tommy scream, I fucking cut off my finger, I cut off my finger.
Completely cut his finger off instantly. It was over in the bushes.
Beth finds the finger laying in this pile of sawdust. We throw it on ice, drive to the hospital. My dad comes in and he's like, you have to fix his finger.
And so for 2 weeks, they tried to reattach the finger.
3 different surgeries.
But it became apparent that the finger wasn't going to survive. This one doctor who was a climber came in and told Tommy that he was going to have to come up with a new career now. There's no way he was going to make it as a climber any longer. Oh, that was either the wrong thing or the right thing to say, because it sure fired him up.
I was like, fuck that guy. He doesn't know what I'm capable of.
I remember the first time he tried to climb.
Good, Tommy.
He was like, whoa. Wow, it's gonna be hard.
Good job, sweetie.
When I heard he cut his finger off, I go, well, so much for Tommy Caldwell. The grip in climbing is you wrap your thumb over your finger like that and pull down on the little edges. And if there's no finger there, the physics are all wrong.
I don't know about that.
Everybody around me, except for Beth and my parents, looked at me and they're like, he's done. That's so sad. I knew it wasn't gonna be easy, but ever since Kyrgyzstan, I just have this fire in me that is different than anything I've had before.
He had all these little jars of rice and beans and gravel. You know, he's supposed to jam that nub of a finger in there.
I just abused the thing to retrain the nerves, to toughen them up. Those 6 days of captivity in Kyrgyzstan were so profoundly painful. At first, I felt overwhelmed with fear and fatigue and hunger. But at some point, I felt something come over me, this reserve of energy, this confidence. Like, I knew I was cold, I knew I was hungry, but those things didn't matter anymore. I think we all have this idea of where our limits lie. If you're hurting really bad, you get to a point where you're like, I can't endure anymore. And it takes something to force you past that. In Kyrgyzstan, I realized that my preconceived limits were totally off base. That we are capable of so much more than we really could ever imagine.
There's this really hard climb nobody had done that he tried the year before he cut off his finger and he couldn't do it. Come on, Tommy! A year later, he came back without the finger and he did it.
He cuts off his finger. Oh, no big deal. I'll just get better after that.
I have no idea how that's possible.
That's when Tommy took his game to the biggest stage on earth, which is El Cap.
At that time, there were only a few free climbs that went up El Cap.
Some of the hardest big wall climbs ever done. Just to climb one of these routes would have been a monumental achievement for the best climbers in the world. And then Tommy walks into the valley, missing a finger, and just started knocking them down one after the other.
Over the next 5 years, he went on a rampage.
I did basically all the existing routes on El Cap.
Salve Wall,
The Zodiac,
El Corazon,
Golden Gate.
La Nose.
Then he starts speed climbing these routes, linking one into the other.
2 El Cap routes in a day. 6,000 feet of climbing.
I mean, that was unheard of.
You did it!
And then I started looking for new routes.
Tommy started looking between the lines for his own first ascents.
It added that element of the unknown. This what if, like maybe that could be climbed.
I think Tommy could become hypnotized, trying to figure out where is the ultimate limit.
Oh, shit. I did the first ascent of the Muir Wall.
The West Buttress.
Dihedral Wall.
Magic Mushroom.
Anybody that does a first ascent on El Capitan has their place in history forever. Tommy did 5 of them.
Anything he could dream up, he did it.
And everyone in the climb world is just like, what the hell?
He's Mr. El Cap.
The best big wall climber ever.
And Beth was with him all the time, climbing all of these routes together.
We just poured our hearts into climbing and supporting each other on these goals.
That was quite a team.
They were known as the first couple of climbing. It was one word, Beth and Tommy.
We get married. We ended up buying property like 20 minutes from El Capitan and building a house there. We're just gonna live in Yosemite and raise our kids there and keep climbing.
I was good friends with them both, and we were next door neighbors. They seemed so happy.
I'm like, wow, this life that I never even saw coming in the first place is starting to just magically appear. Things are going seemingly really well, at least from my mind. But I'm noticing over time, little cracks started to form. First inklings of almost like hostility towards me. There was all this weird tension. And I was just like, well, you know, we've been together for 8 years now. Marriages go through troubling times. We'll get through this and just keep climbing.
I think there was a natural growing apart. Desires we had outside of climbing. I think going through a super intense experience like Kyrgyzstan, I mean, we were so young. Years later, there's probably a lot that started to come out, healing that I hadn't done. And at some point, the climbing we had wasn't enough glue to hold it together anymore.
In Kyrgyzstan, Beth was extremely traumatized by those 6 days, and Tommy was the person who saved them. And so from that, I think a sort of dependency probably developed that isn't necessarily the same thing as true love.
Eventually, she started feeling something for somebody else. And I don't know how to summarize this. This is a kind of hard thing to talk about, but that relationship with her and this other man just solidified in a way that she couldn't walk away from that anymore, and she wanted that more than she wanted me. Once the divorce fully happened, I was just crushed. I drove to the rim of Yosemite Valley and was looking across at El Capitan. It felt like El Cap was all I had. Early in the morning, there's this one panel of the wall that illuminates first. And that's why it's called the Dawn Wall. The last unclimbed big swath of stone. I had looked at it a little bit before and knew that it was way too hard, like I'd never be able to do it. But I was just hurting so bad that I had to figure out a distraction in life. Like I couldn't just sit there and like feel the pain. I decided to go up there alone and beat myself up on the wall. It was just a way to cope. I walked around the back to the top of El Cap. I started rappelling down from above, and I put in a camp so I could stay up there. And I started going through this process of searching for a way to climb this section of the wall. The specific path was totally unknown. You look for weaknesses in the rock. Corners that you could wedge your body into, cracks for your hands and toes, little edges for your fingertips, anything that you could possibly grab onto that would make this wall climbable. At first, it was just hanging on the rope, analyzing the surface of the rock to see if there was holds. Just finding something to obsess about so I wouldn't obsess about my divorce.
I think it's probably important that it was like an impossible level of rock climbing. When you absorb yourself in some magnificent challenge, there's no space to be thinking about anything else. You know, if you're heartbroken, just throw yourself at an impossible wall.
So I'm sitting up there through this storm. My wife has left me. And she was the only person I had climbed with for like 10 years. In my portaledge at night, weeping and really feeling sorry for myself, trying to find this elusive thing that probably didn't even exist.
I was concerned. It just seemed to be suffering at that point. And I wanted to see what this was all about, so early on in the game, I went up there with him.
I convinced my dad to come up there and belay me so I could start actually trying to climb sections of the route.
What the heck?
I really had my doubts as to whether it was going to be a viable climb.
Be safe. I will. Get strong. Yep.
But during that period of time, he became convinced that it was somehow possible.
Tommy spent an entire year swinging around looking for a route up the Dawn Wall. trying to connect the dots from the bottom all the way to the top so you can someday hope to free climb the whole thing.
Eventually, I found a route that seemed like it was theoretically possible. Like I found the path through the maze, maybe. But I realized there was no way I was gonna be able to do this alone.
It's just a monumental project.
Without Beth, I needed to find a partner. Somebody that I could rely on to help me solve this puzzle.
Maybe I should wake Kevin up with some coffee.
Stretching. That's a good idea. I felt a little rugged when I first woke up. How are you feeling?
Still stuffy and sore throat.
Yeah.
Kind of achy.
I think I got whatever you got.
After the first couple of days on the wall, there's a small little cadre of people down in the meadow following their progress. You can get a telescope or a pair of binoculars, look up at this spectacle happening.
Oh my God.
Is he naked or what? My name is Tom Evans. I've been for many years photographing climbers on El Cap. I usually don't come in the winter, but this is big news in climbing. And we've all been pulling for him for many years.
I was on a little vacation from work, and I decided to come out from Sacramento to watch these guys climb the Dawn Wall. It's definitely a moment in history. To be able to be a part of that and witness it is pretty phenomenal.
Pushing forward. From here on up, every pitch is like pretty legit. We've got to pace ourselves. Maybe 1 or 2 pitches a day.
Come on, Tommy. Good. Good, Tommy. Come on.
Nice. Yeah.
Come on. God.
Good. Yeah, Kevin. Nice, dude. Cool. Nice, dude. That was sick.
It's day 3 on the wall, and we sent pitch 10.
Yeah, boom. Things are going good.
Things are going good. And the forecast is calling for super cold, windy temps tomorrow, so we're gonna rest.
Urgent weather message. Ooh. Winds 50 miles per hour with gusts 75 or higher. Impact down trees, down power lines, flying portal edges.
These guys are up there in the middle of winter, which is almost unheard of. But they need it to be as cold as possible so they can stick to the tiny holds.
There's nobody else on the wall. Last night, the temperature dropped 30 degrees. To be up there under these conditions, it's horrendous. I don't know how they do it.
Air beaters. The wind chill's like -20 or something.
How you feeling over there, KJ?
It's getting pretty rowdy. On El Cap, the wind blows straight up the wall. The ledge would float up and then bang back into the wall.
Oh boy. Tommy feels right at home.
Right. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I love this shit.
It might be smart to stay in the ledges today.
Because of the windstorm the day before, all of this moisture froze like salt on a margarita glass on the top of El Cap. And as soon as the sun hit the top of the wall, that ice just started to shower down on top of us. These missiles flying by our camp. You hear it before you see it. I'm like, this is kind of like a deadly situation. Like,
Oh, that was fucked up, man. Did you get hit by any big ones? No, but that was pure luck. That was scary. I hate that shit.
Come some more big chunks. Tommy forgot his helmet.
Heads up, Tommy!
Tommy doesn't seem too concerned. What the fuck?
What's new? Tommy, he was made for something like this. But for me, it took a long time
to get comfortable on the wall.
You can understand Tommy grew up in the mountains. You know, he'd spent the better part of his adult life on El Capitan trying to do free climbs. But this guy, Kevin, was raised in Santa Rosa, I think, you know, wine country.
There's not a lot of rock climbing in Santa Rosa, California.
First ascent. Yeah! Don't fall on the Camaro.
I found climbing through the local gym.
Bye, honey.
Bye, Mom. Have fun. Drive careful.
I got really into this particular form of climbing called bouldering.
It's typically 30 feet or less. Doesn't require any gear. Bouldering's just about athleticism and difficulty in its purest form.
Bouldering is all about trying the hardest individual moves. And Kevin quickly became very, very talented. He was one of the best in the world. At only up to about 30 feet.
In 2009, I was at kind of the top of my game in bouldering and looking for something new. I kept hearing about this futuristic thing that Tommy was working on. I had zero big wall experience. Tommy and I didn't know each other at all, but I just sent him a message out of the blue. Hey, do you need a partner? And to my utter shock, he said, meet me in Yosemite in October.
I knew Kevin by reputation. He was this amazingly strong bouldering kid. And I thought to myself, what the heck? Maybe he could be an asset. Plus, he was the only one interested. Everybody else thought I was crazy.
Show up. I remember standing there with Tommy, who's a legend figure in my life. I feel like such a fucking dork. Who am I? I've never climbed El Cap. What a noob.
You know, fiddling around on boulders, that's a far cry from being on El Capitan.
First thing I had to do was sort of test him. I gave him like an 80-pound haul bag.
A soul-crushing load.
We hiked to the top of El Cap.
We spent the night on top. Woke up early the next day.
3:15 in the morning, cooking up a little breakfast.
You never get up at 3 in the morning to go bouldering.
And start rappelling down the face. You start walking backwards. It's like stepping off the edge of the earth. You instantly have 3,000 feet of exposure under your butt.
How's it going up there, Kev?
Good, I got the bag.
And my shoes?
And your shoes.
Cool, thank you.
It's scary to be a total beginner again. I don't know any of this stuff. Trying to figure out how to Jumar a fixed line. How to set up a portal edge.
Sorry, Kevin.
I'll just hold this corner in. It's cool.
How to take a dump on the side of the wall.
Gotta get every moment.
Well, close up. You're out.
At this point, I have no idea what I'm getting into. No idea that it's about to consume 6 years of my life.
When Kevin joined on with Tommy, it was the first time since getting divorced that Tommy had a partner.
There's 2 bolts and then an old bolt.
I didn't know what we were up against, but I was going on faith that this is Tommy's world. He's got the clear vision of what this could be, and I'm just gonna trust that.
The basic strategy early on was not to climb the route from the bottom. It was to identify the hardest sections and focus on those first.
There were all these question marks.
Come on, Tommy.
Okay, take there.
Well, I got the crystal with my right hand instead of my left.
Working it out. Constantly working it out.
Early on, most of it was figuring out what didn't work. Right in the middle of the wall. We were gonna have to traverse sideways.
Come on. Come on.
I don't see any holes, but I try to harness some of Tommy's optimism.
After the traverse, there's this 8.5-foot blank section, completely smooth, nothing that you could even get your fingernails behind. The only way was to just leap. This crazy dynamic move, a dyno. I didn't really believe it would be possible until I saw Kevin try it.
Oh, yeah, man. Really close.
He showed me that it was.
Come on. All you got.
Above the dyno, you have pitch after pitch of super smooth granite, extremely polished. Because of Tommy's missing index finger,
He's using his thumbs in crazy ways.
Holy crap, that is hard. 13D, 13D, 13C, 14A.
To understand the difficulty of this route, you have to understand climbing grades. Climbers use a numerical system to rate the difficulty of each pitch. The higher the number, the harder the pitch. Once you get into 513, 514 level, that's virtuoso territory. The Dawn Wall has more hard pitches than every other route on El Cap combined. I always thought it was futile. In terms of doing the whole thing, man, this is a pipe dream, man. Come on.
The next few years were a grind.
coming back every spring and every fall for months at a time.
Come on! Oh!
Living on the wall takes a huge toll.
This is what El Cap does to your feet.
We'd stay up there a few days,
Oh my God, that's a lot of airtime.
go down, rest, try again.
There were always new problems to face.
Get out of here!
Come on, Kevin. Do it, man. Oh, really close.
Oh, I sprained my ankle.
You okay, man?
Oh, shit.
So many reasons to give up.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I broke or dislocated a rib, so we're headed to the clinic. Maybe they'll just pop it back in.
They're just gonna pop it right back in and we'll go back up later tonight.
But Tommy was committed.
Come on, Kevin, come on!
There were times I thought he was totally crazy.
Come on!
When we weren't together on the wall,
We would go home to our own worlds.
check in on loved ones.
It's gross. I can see the oil on your hair. Okay, I'm totally being a mom.
Try to get some good rest and find motivation for the next round of attempts.
When I wasn't on the Dawn Wall, I was living by myself in Colorado, training and obsessing. I was really lonely, honestly. I met this girl named Becca.
We started dating. He was thoughtful and considerate, but from the beginning, it was pretty obvious. His mind was completely occupied by the Dawn Wall. It wasn't just a climb. It was all consuming. We were trying to build a relationship, but he would go out to Yosemite for months at a time, giving everything to the Dawn Wall.
For years, Tommy put his whole life on hold so he could give every last ounce of his body and soul to this impossible quest.
I could never tell if we were wasting our time or we were in pursuit of something grand.
Come on!
I'd go out to Yosemite and I'd watch him from the meadow. It looked completely ridiculous.
You know, I think we all admire people who are dedicated, but at some point you just start to wonder, where are the lines between dedication and obsession?
He was going through emotional agony.
This climb has been gut-wrenching. I want this for him so badly. Oh, he fell off.
Oh. Man, I mean, you've failed on this thing like 800 times. How can you continue to beat your head against this wall?
After years of effort, it didn't feel like we were any closer to our dream.
He's worked so hard. Why am I crying right now? This project,
This makes me wonder if he bit off more than he could chew.
Oh, it's so good to have you down.
After all this failure, I started to wonder if maybe this climb really was impossible. Maybe I wasn't good enough.
Morning.
Morning.
Tommy and Kevin have been up there. This is their 8th day. They're halfway up the wall. They got past 70-mile-an-hour winds, the ice fall. They've climbed a lot of difficult rock. Now they've got today a very hard section to do. They're here. They've got to go across this traverse, 14D, I think it is. If they can get that done, they're well on their way.
The hardest individual part of this 3,000-foot puzzle is the traverse. The bottom section of the route follows a vague series of cracks and corners in the rock. But after 1,000 feet, those cracks and corners dead end. 300 feet to the left, there's another series of features that angles up to the top. The trick is, how do you traverse this 300-foot blank section right in the middle of the wall?
There's this band of rock that's a slightly different color and texture.
Everything above and below it is impossible to free climb. But the composition of that band is such that it has a few holes on it.
Over the last 6 years, we spent over 100 days trying to get across this traverse.
Thousands of tries on that single pitch.
And never done it. Now we have to do it for the very first time.
It's like Tommy's getting ready.
In the moment, on the push.
Go get it.
It's really unnerving. You're just waiting to slip off at any moment.
It's kind of funny, like this 3,000-foot wall, and it's coming down to millimeters of skin contact on your fingertips. It becomes such a zoomed-in world.
There's one way to get across, and it's made up of all these little sequences that have to be done perfectly. You miss a hold, it's impossible.
Yeah, dude.
You grab it wrong, it's impossible. We're trading attempts. Tommy ties in and just flips that switch.
All right, go get it, Tommy.
You grab these sharp holds, like razor blades.
Come on.
Span as far as you can. So stretched out. I suddenly felt this confidence. I knew exactly how each finger was going on to each hold, where the little ripples on the rock were digging into my shoes. After years of working on that pitch, it just came together in this amazing, magical way.
Come on. Come on.
When I heard that Tommy had done pitch 15, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. For the first time, these guys actually have a shot at maybe doing this thing.
When Tommy got across, it was a big moment. Everything was rolling, and now it was my turn. Over the years, we realized sometimes the best conditions are at night. It's colder, it's drier, so there's better friction on the rock. At first, it's scary. But after a while, you forget how high off the ground you are, and you can focus just on the climbing. Tried it a few times. I wasn't that close. We rappelled back to our camp below the traverse. I was stoked for Tommy, a little stressed for myself.
So Tommy's made it through the traverse. He still has to get past the dyno and the long run to Wino Tower. But first, he has to wait for Kevin to catch up.
Hello?
Hey guys, it's John Branch from the New York Times. How's it going up there?
Good, John.
You know, Tommy, I know that you made it through 15 last night. It's very exciting, so I appreciate you guys taking a few minutes to talk.
You know, we're always looking for stories that are a little bit out of the mainstream sports realm.
Every time we start a hard pitch,
I knew about the Don Wall and Tommy Caldwell's quest. And when I heard that Tommy did pitch 15, I thought if it was ever going to happen, this might be the time. We recognized this is not only probably the best climbing story of the year, but maybe of our generation.
We talked about kind of follow-up stories, you know.
Quickly typed up a story, and the next day it ran in the paper.
It was on the front page of the New York Times, and it just exploded.
It was the most viewed email story at nytimes.com. Tons of comments, lots of questions. People care about this.
When John Branch, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, got a hold of it, it just sort of got its own momentum, and it just got bigger and bigger from there.
There was follow-up stories and a flood of media requests from every major news outlet in the world.
Picture this. Our next guests talk to us as they were suspended high up in midair.
we're sitting in a portaledge, which is basically a hanging cot with a aluminum frame.
That's professional climber Tommy Caldwell, 10 days into what's considered one of the world's most daunting climbing challenges.
This is crazy. Best of luck.
Great, thank you so much. Guess we hang up. I don't really know.
They don't tell us what to do when it's over.
Oh my God.
They're gonna climb all the way up that damn mountain.
How many days does it take?
All of a sudden, there are like crowds of people congregating in the valley.
Let's turn now to this incredible and historic feat by two American climbers.
Perched on a cliff above Yosemite.
The famously steep face of El Capitan.
The whole media thing was very strange for me.
The climb of the century.
It's just been extraordinary.
A real cliffhanger. Did I just say that?
They're just saying these ludicrous things.
Two American hikers, daredevils,
Thrill seekers,
adrenaline junkies.
scaling the cliff known as El Capitan.
That's not even El Cap.
Inching up without any climbing tools.
I'm wearing pretty much the same gear that the guys up in Yosemite are wearing.
I like the second picture, so we'll have her here.
The Dawn Wall was always this personal journey.
This was a bad idea.
And obviously, this turned into something very different from that.
So don't understand how they could possibly do that.
I hope they make it, but I swear I don't understand it.
It's the challenge.
Yeah, the challenge of it. No thanks.
Suddenly, the whole world was watching this climb.
Which wasn't the best timing for me personally. Because I still had to do pitch 15.
At this point, they've established a base camp a couple hundred feet below the traverse. So when Kevin's ready to climb, they go up the fixed ropes to the start of pitch 15. Tommy sets up his belay, and Kevin tries to get across this thing.
Here, it's actually a good moment on the climb.
Drove all the way out here to the edges to see this.
It was important to get through pitch 15 and catch up to Tommy's high point as soon as possible.
Come on, Kev, we got it.
Every fall, you go back to the start of the pitch, rest for at least an hour, try again. Every attempt, you wear off more skin, you run out of a little more energy.
Everything was going smoothly until Jorgensen couldn't grasp pitch 15.
Stopped by the sheer difficulty of the
As
climb.
the razor-sharp handhold tore the skin off his
So
fingertip.
everyone's tuning in the middle of guys living on the side of the wall,
Well, history is on hold right now in Yosemite National Park.
and one of them stuck.
Kevin Jorgensen is stuck.
That was close, dude. I know. It's like you just started to fall apart a little bit there.
It's a pretty fascinating drama, unfolding in real time, literally in front of our eyes. People who I'm sure had no idea what a pitch was. We're now sitting there going, pitch 15, come on, Kevin, you can do it.
You'll get it, dude. That was really close.
I spent a few days not climbing, just belaying Kevin over and over again on pitch 15. It was harder than any pitch of climbing he'd ever done. He just kept falling and falling. I had honestly started to lose hope that he was going to do it.
Last night was my third day of battle with pitch 15. Still didn't do it.
After trying so many times, I've destroyed my fingers. So I decided to take a rest day and let my fingers heal.
Meanwhile, Tommy hasn't climbed for days, and he has to be thinking, I can't stay up here indefinitely waiting for Kevin. I mean, there's very few people in the world that have ever even spent that much time on a wall.
Living on the wall just wears you down. It's just harsh up there. You can't even walk. You're not sleeping great at night. Like, you're not eating normal foods, drinking enough water. It's hard to climb your best under those conditions.
Every day that goes by, maybe Tommy suddenly gets sick. Maybe the weather changes.
I felt like I had to continue.
So they devise a plan. Tommy's gonna press on and try the dyno pitch, hoping that Kevin eventually will get across 15 and he can catch up.
That night, we go up our fixed lines, and I belayed Tommy on pitch 16, the dyno pitch.
You know, I had tried the dyno move hundreds of times over the years. Never done it. I'd rebuilt it on the shed at my home so I could just practice this one stupid move. Just before we went for our final push, I was completely frustrated staring at these photos of the wall. I started to notice cracks and edges that go down and around. So I came up with this idea to do the most ridiculous pitch of climbing.
His idea was to just climb in a giant circle around the dyno. I was like, really?
So to get around about 8 feet.
Yeah, I climbed like 200.
Tommy's currently working out the world's hardest down climb. We do hard moves going straight up, hard moves going sideways. I should add a down climb. That way we just get the full package.
Down climbing, it's so unnatural.
Falling.
It's like running backwards.
That felt horrible.
Good, Tommy.
Come on, focus. Good.
This loop pitch, it's like walking around the block to cross the street. It's just a little bit ridiculous. But it's also kind of brilliant.
Come on. Come on.
This thing that had been shutting him down for all these years. And then he just looks at it with a new set of eyes and finds a new solution.
Yeah!
Grab the dyno!
Woo!
How is the skin, dude?
It's not healing very quickly, which is frustrating.
While Kevin's waiting for his fingers to heal, Tommy continues pushing the route higher and higher. What you do every day is you get to a high point and then you leave fixed ropes that go back down to the camp. The next day, you motor back up the ropes to the high point and then carry on. So even though they might be working on different parts of the wall, they're doing it together. Kevin belays Tommy, and once Tommy's done, they both go back down to the camp.
Tommy's just forging on. Every pitch gets him further away from where I'm stuck.
One more down.
There's so much distance between our high points that I'm not gonna be able to close that gap in a reasonable amount of time unless I do this.
Every time I would look over in his portaledge, he would just be following news updates, staring at his fingertips,
Not a bad split.
mumbling to himself.
Trying to convince myself that these actually look good. Tommy, do you have the ibuprofen?
Oh, yeah.
After 2 days resting, I felt resolved. This was the day it had to happen. It's still pretty warm out, so I'm gonna wait a few more hours for the temperatures to drop even more to give myself every bit of friction you can. You ready? Ready as I'm ever gonna be. I've been waiting for days for the skin to heal, for this moment to come. There's a nice cold breeze blowing up the wall. I felt weightless. I was just floating across the pitch.
Hold it together. Come on, Kevin. Do it, man. You got it. Come on. You got it. Come on. Find it. Good. Come on. Oh, that was so good, dude.
Everything was perfect, and I still didn't do it. I tried 4 times that night.
Fucker! He's off.
Just kept falling.
Shit.
Tonight didn't go so well. It was a battle and I didn't win.
It was pretty clear that that was it. Like, you had your chance. You weren't good enough.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked.
Now you're the guy that almost climbed the Dawn Wall. So how much did you enjoy that process? Because that's all you get.
Editors and I started talking. Is it now time to do a story about what happens if he doesn't make it? You know, we all want happy endings, but as a journalist, you're like, well, that's kind of an incredible story. What's the ethos in climbing? Do you say, you go ahead without me? Do you leave a guy behind? Are they having this conversation in the portaledge at night?
It'd be nice to check the radar.
The next day, the weather was starting to get bad. And I knew what I needed to do.
20%.
Today?
Next, like 4 days.
I'm just gonna throw in the towel and support Tommy to the top.
From here on out, Kevin's just gonna belay Tommy and follow him up the ropes. So they go up to Tommy's high point, where he starts up the last hard pitches of the long run to Wino Tower.
There I was, watching Tommy climb with so much confidence toward the completion of this dream. Even if I can't do this, I was really happy for Tommy. What a special moment to witness this piece of history. And I was there to help Tommy realize this vision. After everything he went through, so much struggle, the injuries, the doubts, for Tommy, it was like, this is it.
Feels good.
I'm down in the meadow watching Tommy trying to get to Wino Tower, which is the next big feature above them. It's this mythical landmark about 2/3 of the way up El Capitan.
This 3-foot pedestal, 2,000 feet up the wall.
The first horizontal ledge where you can stand up, sit down, lie down on the entire route.
And it signifies the end of the hardest climbing.
One more hard pitch to get to Wino Tower. It's crazy. For years, I envisioned this moment of getting to Wino Tower. So I'm freaking out inside. Climbing really tense and kind of like shaking, nervous.
Keep breathing, dude. Come on. Good.
Just trying to calm myself down enough to make it through a final last little bit. Oh.
Oh! Yeah! Yeah, Tommy.
Oh, I feel a little shaky. I think I might pass out. I can't believe I'm here right now. I know it's not over yet, but that's like big. I'm at Wino Tower.
What are you feeling?
I want Kevin to experience this too, for sure. It was this huge victory, but it was totally trumped by the fact that Kevin wasn't going to do it with me. Suddenly, I just felt alone. I think Kevin probably did too. What a crazy experience this has been. Kind of crashed down on me. That going to the top without Kevin was going to be devastating. Just got to get KJ up here now. So I decided in that moment, we were going to get to the top together.
What do you do?
Everything I can to help him. Yeah. Gonna go into full-on support mode.
That night, we both go back down to the camp. We were cooking dinner. It was real quiet. And I knew it was this emotional moment for Tommy. But he's not very good at verbalizing.
I want to do this thing with you, and I would love for, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's cool, but. I mean, it's awesome, but when I take, I just really want you to be with me, you know?
Yeah, dude. Tommy just told me, in classic Tommy style, I don't care how long it takes for you to get through pitch 15, because I can't imagine a worse outcome than doing this alone.
I don't want to hold you back is the thing.
Well, I mean,
like you're 3 days from the top now, essentially.
Yeah, but like I said, I really want to do it with you. So.
Okay.
It's a pretty special moment.
I know I can do that pitch.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like if I can do that pitch, I'm going to be so fucking psyched that there's nothing that's going to stop me between there and the top.
Yeah, I think that's true. Just keep stretching. Make sure you can.
I think I need to do like some arm lengthening stretching.
So we decided that I would rest 2 consecutive days so that my skin could heal and try again.
The idea of Tommy waiting to risk your own success in the hopes that maybe by some miracle Kevin can do it, that's a partner right there.
Coffee for KJ.
But there's no guarantee that Kevin's ever going to make it.
I mean, I thought that Kevin was maybe not going to make it. And I was hoping that since this had been a dream of Tommy's a lot longer than it had been a dream of Kevin's, that Tommy would find a way to complete this climb.
As Tommy's friend, selfishly, I'm thinking to myself, like, Kevin, dude, time to throw in the towel and support Tommy.
You know, somebody less gracious than Tommy Caldwell might have said, I got to go on without you.
But he was committed to Kevin. We're doing this together. And he wouldn't have been Tommy if he'd done it any other way.
This just in, those two American climbers.
Kevin Jorgensen.
Kevin Jorgensen.
Kevin's far
Stuck
behind.
for 7 straight days.
Caldwell determined to wait
One of
for
them
Jorgensen.
refusing to move higher without his partner stuck below. So will they make it?
Can you imagine? This really is no
The
joke.
media is starting to sound like a tabloid. Is Jorgensen spoiling Tommy's dreams?
Down below, the crowd is waiting and watching.
Hey, Tommy, what's the weather look like? Oh, wait. Yeah, that's right. You dropped your phone.
Dropped my phone last night. I had my chest pocket unzipped. It just fell out. Hopefully I didn't kill anybody down there.
I had heard that Tommy dropped his phone. And I said, did he really drop his phone? Or is he just saying, don't call me anymore? You know?
So fed up with the media circus.
I think he didn't drop it. He threw it off.
Yep. Guess I gotta just like enjoy the view now.
Over the next few days, Tommy was content. Right where we were for however long it was going to be. He's just stoked to be up there, and it's no big deal if it takes another rest day or 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like I've just been, appreciating things a little bit more the last few days.
Son. Tommy basically said, no worry, I'm patient. You're gonna get through it. Don't freak out. Don't worry about the rest of the world that's watching right now. Let's tune them out. It's just you and me. It became the two of them.
I think I have to, try to front step more. Because when it comes time to, step on that middle foot, I can't front step it or instep it because this foot's in the way.
A couple of your falls last time were just because you couldn't find that right foot. So even if it's a little bit harder, it's maybe better.
Tommy's attitude helped take a little bit of the pressure off. But I was still gonna have to do the hardest thing I've ever done for this to end well.
Trying to make history on one of the hardest climbs in the world. TJ, what's the story?
Here's a story, and I'm only about 30 feet up, and I've called my mama twice. All right, can you imagine? I'm on what's called a portal ledge that's secured to this wall. Now, these two climbers are using one of these secured to a flat surface. All right, they're having to sleep on one of these things for weeks, possibly trying to make it impossible climbing. Me, I have holes here I can use to try to climb the wall.
Scaling the jagged cliff known as El Capitan.
Who is that, Fitz?
3,000 feet. The guys want to be the first to free climb it.
Fitz and I have been home waiting for our moment to get on a plane and get out here. And it's finally come. We're here. Hey Fitz, do you see way up high on El Cap? Yeah, can you see Daddy?
After failing for so many years, there was times when I definitely felt like giving up. But it was actually Becca who helped me to keep going.
Seeing him in his element, I saw this focus and this purpose. I just really respected him, and we fell in love.
Becca became my biggest supporter.
We got married, and then we got pregnant shortly after. Hi.
We had a little boy named Fitz.
Hi, Fitz.
You know, the first day that I had this little baby in my arms, I was overcome with emotion. I thought, how am I going to be a good example to Fitz?
How great it is to be a Caldwell boy.
Tommy always viewed his dad as a superhero, and he wanted to be a superhero for Fitz.
I wanted Fitz to look at me with that same sort of awe. I wanted to show Fitz how to be passionate. And how to dream big. The Dawn Wall embodied that. And so it made me want it even more.
I told him, you can't stop now. You have to do everything to make this happen.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sometimes you zoom out and you think about what a process it's been. This wild 6-year journey with Tommy.
Did Kevin start already?
And now, here we are, at the moment of truth.
We've just been mesmerized. Like, it's hard to put into words something so big.
He's not going to give up.
I couldn't imagine what he must have been going through at that moment.
I don't remember the first 50 feet of that pitch.
I watch him go into the section where he had fallen so many times. I just hold my breath.
You pull as hard as you can. Move your feet. You're just trying not to tip over backwards. Put the heel on it. Slide the hand up. Take the heel off. Drop the right hand in. Heel back on. Left hand down. Heart rate starts to go up.
My adrenaline starts going because he's still hanging on in this place that he had fallen so many times. Watching him do it, I was just awestruck. I was like, I can't believe that just happened.
He did it. Freaking guy actually did this thing, right? You're like, what?
After 7 days, Jorgensen got past the most
finally
difficult.
did make it.
Kevin
Jorgensen conquered pitch 15.
Yes, he made it, and now it's upward. And you start thinking, well, are his fingers okay? Can he do 16, 17? Is this over yet?
I had just finished the hardest pitch of my life, and I couldn't even celebrate. I just need to catch up.
The next pitch has this big dyno that's so hard that Tommy can't do it. He's got to climb around it.
There's no way in hell that I'm going to try Tommy's crazy loop pitch. So that same night, I start trying the 8.5-foot dyno.
Kevin, through some kind of magic or levitation, actually does this dyno that Tommy was never able to do.
So good. Well, tonight, Kevin Jorgensen
Jorgensen now just a few hundred feet behind Caldwell.
All these hard pitches just keep coming. 17, 18, 19.
It was like a fight to the death.
Oh, no.
Rock! That is a bad hold to rip off.
Oh, man.
I think it's a lot harder now. It didn't take him too long to figure it out.
Nice, KJ.
Just a little more tension. I think we need more of that on this route.
The last pitch getting to Wino Tower, this crazy fog came in.
Kevin sends this pitch right now. He's gonna be caught up with me.
Yes! Nice one, Kevin.
I just remember seeing Tommy at the anchor and having such a huge wash of gratefulness.
I can't believe we're here. So good, man. Oh.
We're reunited in our high points now.
I can't believe I did it.
Going up from there on out, together to the top.
I was sitting on 5 days rest while I caught up. I'm pretty sure he's gonna pull me up the wall today.
I'm here for it. It's just a matter of grinding it out. So we get up and we stay 300 feet from the top. We wake up this last morning. The sun comes on the dawn wall. It hits the top of the wall first, and we're like the only thing in Yosemite actually in the sun.
So happy.
This is a good moment right here.
Oh my God.
This is definitely a good moment.
Does it get any better than this?
I'm just enjoying my last day, being up here with my friend.
I think we should just stay. Just cancel the whole thing. We're gonna camp here for another day.
Living on a wall where everything is so simple for 19 days. We were gonna miss that experience.
Good morning to our viewers. It's been an exciting 24 hours here in Yosemite.
Tommy Caldwell and Kevin Jorgensen. It's been 19 days on the wall.
There were 15 TV trucks, reporters from all over. There was a webcam. Millions of people were actually watching this live. It became like a moon landing or something. A lot of their friends and family had come out. A number of people hiked up El Cap to back way, and you could sort of watch these guys go up. The final pitches, and they're cheering them on.
I love you! Woo! It's gonna be awesome.
Seeing Tommy do the Dawn Wall, I was super happy for him. Just knowing how much was emotionally wrapped up in the route for him, I was really, proud of him.
Actually seeing he was going to complete this climb, it was just,
After 19 days, Tommy Caldwell pulling himself over the edge of the Dawn Wall. Followed minutes later by climbing partner Kevin Jorgensen.
And the crowd cheered as the two men accomplished a feat many said was impossible.
There aren't a lot of moments that kind of choke me up in sports anymore. I've been doing this too long. I'll never forget that scene of them, rejoicing.
This is the moment that has been so many years in the making.
Now forever enshrined in history.
Inspiring millions around the world, even at the White House, where President Obama gave a thumbs up.
it's done. It's done. Boy, you are shaking like a leaf. But, are you cold or are you emotional?
I'm emotional. He's worked so hard for this.
That moment he describes as bittersweet. This whole experience that drove him for so long was over.
Anything that you would like to say about El Cap?
I've totally fallen in love with that piece of rock. It's been a big centerpiece of my life, and I just feel so thankful every day.
Tommy and Kevin join us now on SportsCenter. I know Tommy's lost his voice a little bit.
He drove me every day for 7 years. Sorry.
What did your first real shower in 19 days feel like?
I, like the entire world, was watching you, and I just thought, why?
Tommy Caldwell's new autobiography, The Push.
You were captured by militants in Kyrgyzstan.
Turns out the militant actually survived the fall.
The rebel was put on trial and found guilty of terrorism, murder, and kidnapping.
You can do it. Let's go. Manta, come on, try hard. There we go. Work hard and focus. You can do it. You're working really hard. Focus. Oh, come on, Fitz. You got it. You can do it. Come on, buddy. Come on. Remember, push up. Strong. Yeah. Don't forget to breathe. Come on. Yeah. Try hard. Try hard. Come on, Fitz. You got it. Yeah. Way to focus in. Good perseverance. Woo! Nice mantle, buddy. High five.